So today we've had 3 batches you had were natural, okay? Let's see.
Pretty sure, yeah.
Steam engine.
Was natural.
Natural.
Mexican,
second one.
Nicaraguan.
Yeah.
Second
you had
one was, what was that? Washed Costa Rican?
What was that? Oh, apothecary.
Yeah.
Is that what? Took a photo. And the first you had?
Was
Honduras. Natural. That was definitely different. This one washed. So we had a pretty even spread today. Cool. And I'm just going to check the apothecary coffee. It was washed, wasn't it? Anyway, so yeah,
3
naturals. The first 3 coffees were natural, and this one was washed. Yeah, so
it is washed, right?
this one's washed. Yeah.
Better
So, yeah. Tastes different. Yeah,
That was
yeah,
bad.
yeah. We always make that joke in the cafe. Oh, washed Europeans, or like, washed ones. It's like low hanging fruit. All right, everyone's gonna make that joke.
Barista jokes.
They're not funny ones. Okay, so yeah, like, how can you tell the difference between, like, I think we can explain what the difference between washed and natural coffees are. We would like to see a solution here, but how can you taste, what's the sensation? What does it mean as a drinker to have a washed coffee and a natural coffee? Do you think one's
washed is
more enjoyable to certain
crisp,
people?
clean and crisp. Different impression. Like, first impression is definitely different. Yeah. That's how I see. Usually, so I think from my background, like my background kind of plays a big part. So, as a Japanese, right, we have a lot of fermented product on the regular diet, everyday diet. So fermented soybean, natto, and like definitely miso, sake, soy sauce, and like a lot of pickled stuff. So I think my palates are actually, I wouldn't say educated, like familiar.
Yeah, right.
Used to it.
Yeah, used to that fermented product. Right. So that's why I can kind of pinpoint or detect that typical fermented.
Yeah. Right. And so, is that enjoyable to you? Like, do you have a preference for natural or washed coffees?
Not really. Whatever that tastes good. Yeah.
I've encountered many cases where, like, I hear people talking about when they're cupping coffees or buying coffees, filter coffees to try, and basically a lot of people kind of shun natural coffees because of that fermented quality. They may be really sensitive to it. So, like you said, you could pinpoint it, but you don't mind either way, really.
No,
you just recognize it. Yeah, these people probably also recognize it, but they have a preference, like, that goes the other direction. They don't like it.
Yeah, they don't.
If it's a bit too boozy or tastes kind of alcoholic, I would say that's bad processing. But they're very sensitive to it, so they'll stick clear usually of the natural coffees. Whereas other people quite enjoy, like what I enjoy about natural coffees is I don't necessarily like those fermenty kind of tastes, but a natural coffee tends to be bigger fruit, sort of more bold, sort of sweet, and
Look at intense flavor to it.
yeah, deeper, hot. And to me that makes the coffee a bit more easy to enjoy for its fruity characteristics. Call me simple, but like if you give me a simply fruity coffee, I kind of can understand that when I drink it and appreciate it more than a really complex but subtle washed coffee. So I'm not adverse to natural coffees, but also I don't think I've had a lot of bad ones. I think the processing on the quality of the natural coffees that I've had have been like really high quality, really clean, for natural, so to speak. And so yeah, I don't really share other people's adverse, like so when they're adverse to natural coffees. I've encountered it a bit in the industry, and
But I
I
think,
kind of don't get
I
it.
don't know, from my understanding, a lot of the baristas tend to lean on like liking naturals more than the wash.
Oh, I would have said the opposite.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah,
Like a lot of the guys
most
I've
wash.
encountered, they tend to lean on natural side than washed.
So my question is, would you guys think, well, do you guys think that people should be fussed about the process?
Well, let's talk about the process. I think they should, if they pay attention to the processing, natural or washed, they might be able to then notice if they have a preference for one style, and then they can sort of help them
both ways.
decide whether they want to order a certain coffee. If it's natural and they don't like natural as well, then they can then decide not to order because they don't like that one. They'll know more about what they're consuming. So it would help them by
definitely. Well, 'cause you wouldn't know until you try it.
Yeah.
So one thing I've been telling, like, say, newly enthusiasts who wants to learn about coffee is, like, definitely, like, this is what I've been telling is definitely check out their origin. Not necessarily variety or altitude. That's not going to give you too much information unless you know the theoretical side. But do check processing. So origin and processing is the key. And as a side note, varietal, yes, of course. Like, say you might have Kenyan SL28, and the next day you might have Kenyan SL28 and SL34, which is going to give you a different flavor notes. Obviously, because one's a blend of varietal where one's like single. So you can really tell that differences. So you might say, oh, I like Kenyan, but then next day you might have same Kenyan, but you might not like it. So then if you know that variety or different point of difference, then it's easier to separate. And like, processing, definitely natural or washed. We all have our preferences.
Alright, so
So
do you want to have a crack at explaining what the difference is? Oh, maybe I should. Let me give it a crack. Okay, let's see.
What? Are you going to say the difference, or am I just
No. I think it's best to explain what each one is, natural and washed.
So what is washed process?
Alright, so basically a washed coffee refers to, like, basically farmers will pick the coffees and then between that stage and actually exporting it and then it landing in Australia, for example, and us roasting it and then the cafes brewing it, there's a stage in there. It's the processing stage. There's like lots of little stages in the shop. But basically the washed coffee, you have to, coffee is a product that you pick the cherry from the coffee tree. And it's got, like the cherries that we eat, it's a different fruit, but it's similar that it's got a coffee seed inside and the fruit on the outside. Now, when they want to ship that over to, let's say, Australia, they don't ship the whole thing. They have to dry it out. And so what they want to do is, like, when we drink coffee, we only really grind in the cherry seed on the inside, right? So basically, the processing method here that we're talking about is washed, is they take those cherries and then they submerge it in water for like different amount of time, maybe 48 hours. And that's basically gonna, the water, just soaking in the water is basically gonna start to make the cherry soft, and then they can sort of like get rid of the outside, the flesh of the cherry. Once they've gotten rid of that, they'll take the cherry, just the seed inside, the coffee seed, and then they'll put that, maybe they'll dry it out on like raised bed or patio or however, whatever method it is. The main point is they soak it in water, that's why it's kind of called washed, and then they'll remove the outside, and then they'll dry it, and then they'll ship that across, they'll export that to wherever in the world. Now, in contrast to natural coffee is basically they skip that soaking stage, and they just take the whole cherry, fruit, and the seed inside, and then they'll put that on the coffee beds, they'll dry that out. So the coffee seed is actually still within the fruit, and all of that's drying. Now, basically, that's going to make some of the flavors in the cherry and all the sugars in the fruit of it, it's going to get absorbed a little bit by the coffee seed. And then, after it's dried out to a certain point, then they'll basically physically just remove the outside, like, through a threshing machine or something like that. They'll strip away all of the outside mechanically, and then they'll take that away, basically that, and then be ready to process. So one has been dipped in the water for an amount of time, washed, soaked, and then you remove it and then dry it. The other one's drying in the coffee cherry. So wash versus natural. There is, of course, honey processed, which is like in between, kind of in the middle, yeah. So what they do there is they strip away the outside but leave a layer that is, it's called the mucilage. It's just around the coffee cherry, and it kind of looks like, when you lay it out on a bed, it kind of still looks a a bit viscous. It's a little bit slimy, shiny sort of thing. It looks like it's been coated in honey, essentially. And so that's where the name, the honey process, the name comes from. Anyway, so then they dry that, and since that's got like a small layer of that fruit still on there, the mucilage, that sort of gives it some level of sort of like sweetness, and it gives it a little bit of that natural characteristic. Yeah. But because not the whole cherry is there, not all of the fruit is there, it's sort of a little bit sort of washed as well. I think. Like it's got like that midway.
Yeah,
in
it's got
processing and in flavour profile.
It's got the good effect of both.
Sure,
it's like taking the good bits of both processing.
Yeah.
So you got that. You still got that natural characteristics, but you still got that clean.
Yeah. You're sort of avoiding a lot of that sort of fermentation with the fermentation.
And especially like I heard when you want a natural characteristics to the coffee, but you want more control.
Yeah.
That's when they choose to do a honey process. Because natural process is because it's done naturally. So it's, you know, laid out on a like open air patio, raised beds, and so the whole process is dependent on the natural condition.
Yes.
So there is no human control at all.
Yeah, that's traditionally how it's been. It's not just like pick, lay it on, and then just keep turning it and let the sun do its job.
Now, you know, different ways of natural processing has been introduced to the market, like industry.
Yeah.
But traditionally speaking, that's how it was done. So the consistency of the product was not really there.
Yeah, it was hard.
That's why it was actually, I wouldn't say rare, but ratio-wise, there was a lot more washed coffee against natural coffee.
Yeah. So like, see, in Kenya, the government controls it so that previously they would only export washed coffee.
Yeah.
Same with water. And only recently have you started seeing natural process ones being allowed. That's due to regulations, like the law changing in those countries. From as far as I know, Ethiopia they haven't had that law restricting natural ingredients. Well, certainly for a long time. Certainly since I got into the industry.
Like all the Ethiopians I had, and I'm talking about like say around 7, 8 years ago, was all washed.
Yeah. Well, back then, that was before I started drinking coffee, and even when I started drinking coffee, I wasn't paying attention to whether it's washed or not. You know what I mean?
Like I just saw the labeling washed natural. I'm like, what is the difference between washed and natural? They definitely taste different, and I didn't know if it was the origin difference or the process difference. It's only like, you know, this past around 4 years. 4 years that I started to really understand the processing differences and how much that difference in processing impacts in that final resulting part. And as a barista, like say for me, my approach to brewing would be so different.
Alright. Let's I want to get into that like when we start brewing.
Definitely.
Let's talk about that. That's an interesting one. There's so much more to talk about talk about it. But I feel like we want to re-tackle this one. This one's something meaty topic.
終わりますか。
ごちそうさまでした。
ごちそうさまでした。